it's Shelby here. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my February mid-month wrap-up. So before we get started, I do have to say I have a cold with all the freaking weather changes that have been going on right now, because we had like a snowstorm like 2 or 3 weeks ago, something like that, and then now today it's like 60 degrees and it just keeps going back and forth between freezing to super warm, and then like things are allergy whatever kind of stuff, and I'm just, my nose cannot take it. So if I sound weird in this video, I apologize. And then I'm hoping, I put my daughter down for a nap and she's been fairly quiet. I just heard her mumble something, but I'm hoping she doesn't start yakking or like screaming her head off during this video while I'm trying to film. So if you hear a baby crying, that would be her. She needs to take a nap. But anyway, so we're just gonna get right into the books that I read. This continues me being a little bit like having slow reading. From like the end half of January, I started to slow down in my reading, and then this first half of February, I'm not reading as much as I normally do. And like I said in, I think my last video or my last wrap up, I've just got a lot of like stressful things going on in my life, a lot of stuff going on with my work, and I just really don't have as much time right now to devote to reading. That being said, I did still read a fairly good amount for the first half of February. I read 8 books, so not terrible. I've definitely read more than that in half of a month, and then I'm also including, since February is a shorter month, I'm stopping, like my halfway point was going to be like Valentine's Day, like February 14th. I did end up finishing like the very last book that's going to be listed that I'm going to mention. I did finish that like the morning of the 15th, so I'm still going to count it in my first half. But yeah, so I guess we're just going to get right into all of these books that I read. So the first book that I read in February is going to be Bad Guy by Ruby Dixon. This is a sci-fi romance, as basically all of Ruby Dixon's books are. I can't remember if there's any books that aren't sci-fi. She might have a few fantasy romance, but the majority of them are sci-fi romance, and this one is a standalone, but it still kind of takes place in the whole Ruby Dixon universe. And this is about Kraken, who is a slave, and his whole purpose as a slave is basically to fight like as a gladiator almost in these fights that his master can like bid on and win lots of money. So that's basically his whole purpose, but he is not wanting to cooperate with his master and all of like the trainers until he meets this human woman who is also a slave by the same guy. And he's very intrigued by her because she doesn't seem to fear him. Or at least she doesn't show that she's afraid of him, and everybody else has shown that they're afraid of him, and he's never seen like her type of humans before, and like I said, he's just very intrigued by her. So the master decides to let Kraken have her in order to get him to cooperate. So she is just like thrown in to the cell with him, and she's basically going to be his pet, and he tells her like to do whatever he wants her to do, or he'll kill her basically. And so then it's their relationship and their romance. I gave this 4 stars. I did really enjoy this one. I thought the romance in this was really sweet. As most of Ruby Dixon's books, the romances are very sweet romances, and I very much enjoy them. I was a little bit surprised this wasn't as steamy as I was expecting it to be. This is, for a Ruby Dixon book, I would consider this slow burn. It took a little bit. They did start to do some sexual activities, but they didn't actually give in and have like penetrative sex until a lot later on in the book. So I would consider this more like borderline, like medium to high steam. Of course, this is an alien kind of romance. And then I guess just trigger warnings for like slavery, because both of them are slaves. And they're not treated very well. The girl, she's, as a human slave, she's treated better than some of the other Ruby Dixon stories where she features like human slavery, but it is still there. So, and then I was just kind of in a like monster romance kind of mood. So then I read Stalked by the Kraken by Lillian Lark, which I think is supposed to, like, the first book starting in a series. And so this is a paranormal romance. So this is about Gideon, who is a Kraken, which is a like paranormal creature that is supposed to be like very powerful and very rare, and he falls in love with a witch. And for him, it's like a fated mate kind of situation. Like, as soon as he sees her, he instantly knows that she is his mate and that he's gonna try anything he can to get them to be together. But Rose, who is the witch that is his mate, she is feeling kind of down on her luck in love. Her family owns this like shop, kind of almost like a sex shop, sort of. It's like a place where like people can pay money and like rent these rooms to like engage in like sexual acts, but then like the rooms, anytime people have sexual acts, they like give off this like magical energy, and then like the rooms like absorb that energy, and they can like take that energy and then like sell it. But then they also have a deal, like what her role is she is like a matchmaker at this place, so she can find, you know, your perfect couple, ideal matches kind of thing. And she's had such a high success rate, and she found a match for herself, which should have been like 100% match, but then this guy ended up breaking up with her. And so she's just like, she's lost her confidence in herself and her ability to matchmake, and so she just isn't really necessarily looking for love. So Gideon is being very careful and very slow in his pursuit of Rose, because he doesn't want to do anything that comes off as like too aggressive and scare her off. But they do like make a deal and do end up getting together, and their romance was really cute. But then this was also a pretty steamy read. There is monster sex in this book, especially with like tentacle play, which I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but I did really enjoy this. It is somewhat more of like an insta-love kind of situation. I think I would have liked it a little bit better had like it been drawn out a little bit more, and their romance got to develop a little bit more, but overall it was really good, and I gave this 4 stars. Then I decided to pick up Dustwalker by Tiffany Roberts. I had previously read Ensnared, which is a alien romance with like a spider alien race by this author duo. So this one is another sci-fi romance, and this one is like a post-apocalyptic set in the far-off future kind of situation, where there's humans, but then there's also these, they're called synths, and they're basically like robots, or cyborg kind of, and I think like the vast majority of people are the synths. So we have this woman, Laura, and she is living in this town that is controlled by a synth, and it's not that great. And she's kind of down on her luck, and like everybody's really poor and struggling to survive. And then she one day is like in her room and catches this other synth watching her, and it's Ronan, because she's like dancing, and he finds that like fascinating, just the way that she dances, and he's watching her, and you know, she turns around and sees him there, and she's really pissed off about it. And they end up making a deal because he wants to continue to see her dance, because there's something about her dancing that he like he's starting to somewhat like feel emotions, and he can feel like the emotions that she brings to her dancing. So he wants to keep watching her dance because he likes it. So they make a deal that he can help to provide for her and protect her and take care of her, if she will dance for him and he can watch her dance. But then she also wants him to find her missing sister. So that's kind of like the whole setup for them kind of getting together. But then there's a lot of other political kind of stuff going on, because they're wanting to overthrow the synth that is head over this town because he's a bad guy. So there's a lot of stuff going on with that, and them trying to finally like take him down so that humans and synth alike can have better lives for themselves. And then it also kind of delves into that, like, what is humanity kind of thing, because this guy's a robot, but he's starting to have the capability of emotions and feelings, and he falling in love with her, and she starts falling in love with him, and all that kind of jazz. So I gave this 3.5 stars. I did enjoy this. I don't know, I just wanted to try this because I wasn't sure how I would like it, but I just kind of feel like robots aren't necessarily like my thing, so that might have had part to do why I didn't give it like a higher rating. The steam is pretty high. There are trigger warnings for some pretty like violent scenes, where they are fighting against like the bad guy. But yeah. Then we're gonna move on to a historical romance. So then I read When Beauty Tamed the Beast by Eloisa James. This is the second book in her fairy tale series. So I had some issues with this one, mostly because like this is my second Eloisa James book, and I just feel like sometimes in historical romances the plot of how they're trying to do things gets very convoluted and unnecessary. So this one is about Lynette, and she thought she was going to become betrothed to the prince of her area, and she I think, was caught kissing him. And now, like, some rumors started, and just because of how her figure is, like, she has larger breasts, and she's a little bit, it sounds almost like she's a little bit more plump. But anyway, just because of how her figure is and because she was caught kissing a prince, everybody thinks that she is now pregnant. And even her family is convinced that she's pregnant. And even though she says that they didn't do anything, and she's like adamant that she's not, they still don't believe her, and they're like, oh, you're gonna end up having a prince's baby. So they don't want to have all that scandal, and they need her to get married to somebody very quickly before she ends up having this non-existent baby. So the person that they end up finding for her to get married to, there's this duke that wants her to get married to his son, but the son does not know this, and the son does not like his father. So she goes to meet this guy, and they're all like, oh, we're your fiance, which I can't really remember why the duke wants her to marry his son. That I got lost on. I did listen to this on audiobook, which may have also been why I missed some things. But anyway, so she meets her fiance, who is an earl, but he's also a doctor. And like at the end of this book, Eloisa says that she drew inspiration for his character. And I don't remember what his name is. Pierce. Okay. She drew inspiration for him from House, if you've ever seen that show, because he has a injury to his leg and he like limps and walks with a cane, and he's also like, nobody likes him. He's very grumpy kind of person, and they kind of meet, and he's like, yeah, we're not getting married. I don't ever want to get married. And she's kind of like, oh, well, we'll see about that. I might change your mind. And it's just them like developing their relationship, and where he finally actually starts to have feelings for her. I did give this 4 stars because even though like the first little bit of like the whole setup for them getting together just kind of went over my head, and I didn't really quite understand. The rest of it I really did enjoy. I loved the 2 characters like banter together. I liked how their relationship developed. I liked how he started to, like, his walls started to come down and he started to feel things for her, and I thought it was really cute. And this, I felt like this was more like steamier than what I was expecting it to be. Like, typically I feel like historical romances are more along the realm of like a medium steam. This had some pretty like steamy scenes to it, and I considered this more pushing along more lines of like a high steam. And then of course all her fairy tales books are retellings of different fairy tales, so of course this one is Beauty and the Beast. And then I read House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the Crescent City series. I read this one because this is actually a reread. I read this when it first came out, but the new book is supposed to come out. I'm filming this on Wednesday, so the new book came out yesterday, and I pre-ordered it, but my copy has still not arrived, which I'm very sad about because I wanted to dive right into it as soon as it came out. I think I keep watching my like where you can track your packages, and I pre-ordered it. I think I got 2 copies. I pre-ordered it from like Barnes & Noble and Target, and my Barnes & Noble one isn't supposed to get here until Monday. And then my Target one, I think it said it's supposed to get here tomorrow. So I'm kind of hoping, since I'm off today, because I do have to work this weekend, that maybe my Target one might come a little bit early and I might get it today, because I'm just like dying to get it. But anyway, that's long ramble about, you know, anyway, this book. So if you are living under a rock and you don't know what this one is about, this is a wonderful story that when I first read it, I gave 5 stars, and with this reread, I gave it 5 stars again. I love this book so much. If you hear my daughter, please ignore her. She needs to take a nap. So this is a urban fantasy. There is a romantic element to it, but I wouldn't even really call this a romance. I feel like the majority of the book, it like doesn't really focus on the romance. It's just kind of there. And it's like the beginning stages of their romance. I'm hoping there's more romance in the second book. But anyway, so this is about Bryce, who is a half fae, half human, and she gets tasked by the governor of Crescent City, who is an archangel, to work with one of his angels, who is a slave, because he started like a rebellion years ago, and his like team like lost, and so all of the losers were enslaved. So he is a slave to this archangel, but the governor wants them to work together to try to solve the murder of Bryce's best friend, who was a werewolf, and she was murdered. You get to see that little bit, like that's the first big bit of this book, but then the vast majority of this book takes place like 2 years later after she gets murdered. So he wants them to solve her murder because now there are other murders taking place, and there's supposed to be this big like summit thing coming into town, where there's like other like world like leaders, and they just kind of like get together and kind of talk about what's going on and make like big decisions. So he wants these murders solved before that happens because he doesn't want to look bad, basically. So this is Bryce and Hunt and them working together to solve this case, and it's them kind of starting to form a romance. Like I said, that's not the biggest part of this book. It just like slowly the beginning stages of it start to develop. But I love this book so much. I cried so much both times reading this because there are some very emotional scenes in this book. But like I said, this is 5 stars and I absolutely love it. Okay, we have 3 more books to talk about. Then I read Hot Under His Collar by Andie J. Christopher. This is a contemporary romance that I decided I listened to this on audiobook. I decided to read this because I had found some really good reviews of this. So this is a priest romance, if you can't tell by the cover. This is about Sasha, who I don't think she's like Catholic. I can't really remember, but her family is very religious, and they want her to be a good like Christian girl and get married before having sex and blah blah. But she has a big crush on the local priest. And then we have Patrick, who is that said local priest, and he also has a crush on Sasha, and he is wanting help from her because they don't have enough funds to keep their pre-K program going. So she works, I can't remember exactly what she does with her job, with like either PR, marketing, something. I think they end up deciding to do like a fundraiser to try to raise some money and awareness to be able to keep their pre-K program going. And so they're having to like work together and spend more time together, and they realize that they really like each other and they're like really like friendly towards each other, but they're also both having sexual type feelings for each other. So this is a problem for Father Patrick because he's not supposed to have any of those types of feelings. And so this starts him down this path of like questioning being a priest and like what he should do about this, if he should just try to ignore it, or if he should not be a priest anymore and pursue this relationship with this woman who then he's not only having these sexual feelings for, but he's starting to have romantic and like he's falling in love with her kind of feelings. I gave this 3.5 stars. I was just kind of surprised because this is just more of like a contemporary romance. I think it's supposed to be kind of along the lines more of like almost like a rom-com, which I didn't really get most of the comedy. I didn't think it was that funny. And I also like a priest romance, I feel like is very like taboo. And I usually like that, but I just didn't really feel that as much in this book. Otherwise, I mean, it wasn't a bad book. I did enjoy it. I would say the theme for this one is more going to be along the lines of medium. This might be for somebody who, if you're kind of thinking about maybe trying like a priest romance kind of trope in a romance book, this might be like a good like starting point. But for me, I just kind of wanted it to be like a little bit more taboo. But yeah, so then I read Say Your Prayers by Crystal Ash and Kathryn Moon. I read this because I have a feeling that I'm gonna just end up reading all of Kathryn Moon's backlist because I've loved like every book of hers that I've read so far. And this is a paranormal romance. This is about Deva, who is a succubus, and she has a thing for these 3 priests on Earth, and she ends up getting kicked out of hell for something. I don't really remember. And so then she goes and seeks refuge at the church where these priests are at. And this is not like a modern day. This is this is more of like a post-apocalyptic kind of setting where it's basically like hell on earth. And all these humans are just trying to survive, and that's basically what these 3 priests are trying to do. They're trying to like they have this community of people that they're trying to protect and keep safe, but then they're also trying to help them, you know, keep faith in God. So she comes and seeks refuge from them, and they all have a thing for her. So this is a reverse harem, but it also, I think, delves a little bit more into polyamory because 2 of the priests are bisexual, and then we end up getting this angel also thrown into the mix. Because there's this angel that he fell and was taken by hell, and he's being tortured, and he's under the same like demon as Deva was, and they want Deva back because they just do. So they let that angel go to try to lure her back to hell, and he's like, I'll make a deal with you. If you can bring her back, then you don't have to come back to hell, kind of thing. But anyway, I give this 4 stars. This is very enjoyable. This is very, very high steam. Since it is technically a priest romance, I didn't get as much of that angst as I was wanting from a priest romance that I typically find, where they're like battling with their faith, and you know, this is wrong, should we do this kind of thing. I didn't get as much of that from this one. I think mostly because since it's a post-apocalyptic kind of setting, they're all like, we're basically less humans here. I mean, they're kind of like, I don't know that God's really gonna care that much, because we're still protecting humanity kind of thing. So I don't know, I just didn't get that feeling from it, but there was still a lot of angst to it. And like I said, if you like polyamorous type situations or reverse harem, you will probably enjoy this. And I did like this one. And then the last book that I read in the beginning half of February is going to be Heart of Blood and Ashes. This is by Mila Vane, and this is the first book in her Gathering of Dragons series. And this is a like fantasy romance. I mostly listened to this on audiobook. I did read, since I do have a physical copy, I did read some of it from this, but I mostly did audiobook. So this is like a barbarian fantasy type situation. Like, it kind of reminded me of Game of Thrones a little bit in certain situations, so if you like that, you might enjoy this book. Let's see here, there's Maddox. Yes, so this is about Maddox, and he found out that his parents, who are the king and queen, have been killed, and so he wants to take revenge on the people that killed his parents. So he sets out to try to kill this guy, and I think he's like a lord or king or something of another like territory, is the one that killed his parents, and so he's going off to kill that guy. But then he finds out that his daughter sent a letter to his parents asking them to like come to where they were, and basically like got them to the place where they ended up being killed. So he also blames her in this whole situation of getting his parents killed, and so he ends up capturing her, and he wants to kill her too, and his whole like revenge plot. And she is Evene, I think is how you say her name. So she is our heroine of this story. And she makes a deal with him because she's like, hey, don't kill me. I can help you because I also don't like my father and want to try to kill him and take him down. But you know what would also like just further help you with that is if we get married and you're going to be king and I'll become your queen. But in doing that, you can also end up taking over, when you kill my father, taking over that territory too, and have even more land and territory, and that'll just make you even more powerful. So he's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but I still don't really like trust you. So the vast majority of this book is the two of them. They're traveling together with his band of dragons. Like, I think that's what they're called, his like troops and like people that protect him and like work with him, warriors or whatever. They're called dragons. And they're going off to try to find her father and to kill him and the rest of her family, because she also has older brothers that she also doesn't like. So this is, and it ends up being their romance. I would consider this a slow burn. It does take a while for their romance to develop because they're enemies. They go from these enemies where he doesn't trust her, and you know, she's also trying to trust him, and just their whole like relationship and how it's developing. It just takes a lot of time for them to come to that more of like a romantic being together kind of thing. I would call the steam of this more medium, and I did give this 3 stars. Not that this was a bad book. I think it's just more if it's not necessarily a me book, because this was much more high fantasy than what I normally read. Like if I'm reading a fantasy or a fantasy romance, paranormal romance, it's more, I don't know. This, like I said, this just reads more of like a high fantasy. So if you're into high fantasy and you really enjoy that kind of genre and want something that has a more, a romantic relationship that is a little bit more heavier, a little bit more to the forefront of the book, then you would probably enjoy this. I just wasn't sure. It just took me a little bit to get into this, and a lot of it kind of went over my head. And I kind of wanted the romance to be even more prevalent than what it was. So like I said, this is the first book of the series, and I have the second book, which I might still read. We'll see. I'm not really sure. But yeah, so that is going to be the last book that I read for the first half of February. That'll be the end of this video. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. And then let me know kind of what books that you've been reading this month. And then if you want to see more videos from me, like at the end of the month, I'll do my end of month wrap up just to kind of see the rest of the books that I read this month. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when those videos come out so you can watch them. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye guys.